Do 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 do. It's Camdor.
Hello everyone, this is Camdork, and welcome to episode 8 of Kerbal Space Program, where we are flying this cool plane. Don't argue with me, this plane is pretty cool. It's called the Pincer. It's got 4 Juno engines, and we are en route back to Kerbal Space Center. Gonna land at runway 27, hopefully. Wish me luck as I do that, but then after we land, we'll talk about what we're doing today. I just came back from a mission where we were collecting temperature data from the planet Kerbin, because apparently this is a thing that we can get money for, and science. But today we're actually going to be doing stuff around that guy, the moon. So we'll just land here first, though. We need to bleed off some speed and get down a little bit lower. By the way, there is a runway on this island. We can land on that, but not today. Not today, and not this plane. Okay, anyway, let me land, and wish me luck. We are going in for the landing. Well, a little bouncy at the end, but not too bad. The steering authority on this wheel is a bit crazy here, but it's tough with the keyboard. Anyways, select successful landing, and I'll see you guys in just a second. We'll go back to the Kerbal Space Center, do some stuff. Alright guys, we are back, and now we're back at the Kerbal Space Center, where we're going to decide what we're going to be doing today, which is going to the moon. Except we're going to be doing something a little different. We're not going to just land on the moon. We're going to actually not land on the moon this episode. We're going to go around it. We're going to go around it specifically, and we're going to launch a thing to go around it. So in other words, we're going to launch a satellite to go around the moon. Okay? Okay. The reason being is we have this contract here. It is a tough contract, though. It's a 3-star contract. That's interesting. Why is it 3 stars, you might ask? Well, let's accept it, and then we'll talk about why it's 3 stars. So it's 3 stars because, well, let's go ahead into the tracking station and see. So it's not from, first of all, let's get rid of Derman's pod. We don't need him anymore. It's fine. That's just his space junk. It's just making things confusing. So let's go ahead and focus on the moon, and you'll see right away there's a thing around the moon. And that green thing around the moon is our anticipated place where we want to put this satellite. There is 2 things about this satellite orbit that are very tricky. The first is not too tricky. It's the fact that the orbit direction is the wrong way. And that is that you see how it's going around, and it might not be easy to see because it's a thin line, but it kind of is highlighting on this line the direction of the orbit, which is like this. It's all the way around this way, which is fine, right? I mean, like, well, whatever, it's just going around around a moon, big deal. Well, it's kind of a big deal because normally we approach with our periapsis to the front where the moon is going, and we go around the orbit of the moon like this. And that is actually the normal way we would also go around the planet Kerbin, which is like this. Passing in front from left to right, and then going behind from right to left, as you see that. So in front from left to right, and behind right to left. This is actually kind of going in front from right to left, and behind left to right. It's the exact opposite direction. So it's pretty easy to fix this. We just approach from behind the moon, and then just make sure that our approach is behind the moon, and then we're going to curve right around and go just like this, right around, and we'll be fine. So, okay, that's number 1. Number 2, the reason why this is so difficult is that it's so tilted. It's like really tilted. It's not even just like slightly tilted. It's very tilted. It's almost up and down completely. It's almost a polar orbit. This is going to make it a little bit more difficult. And for this, we're gonna invoke time as our thing, and you'll see how we do that in a little bit. So first, let's go ahead and just build a thing to satisfy this contract, and then we'll worry about launching it in a minute. Okay, so let's go ahead to the VAB, where we say hello to the people building. Actually, before we do that, we have a 774 science to spend. Let's go ahead and spend it. The R&D building, though, needs to be upgraded because we have about 1 million space bucks, or whatever these things are called. So let's go ahead and upgrade that for about 500,000. It means we can do a science limit from 100 level to the 500 level, which is going to be important. So as we go into the R&D center, this is the 100 level. Anything beyond that was unavailable for us. So now we can actually research things right here. And we're going to want a few of those things. We're gonna want heavy rocketry eventually. We're not gonna want it now. We don't absolutely need it, but let's just go ahead and research it anyways. As well as propulsion systems. This is useful, especially for satellites. We might use these. We probably won't use them on this satellite. I don't know if we need them. But we got a few other things. Advanced construction's pretty nice because it also gives access to a few things here, like the bigger docking port and a few other fun things. But for now, we're just gonna need. We'll do space exploration, and reason why is so we can have this bigger command module, which we're going to want pretty soon. We're also going to want this, the mobile processing lab. We'll want that in a later episode, but not right now. We have 184 space bucks left to spend. We're going to do it on, we can do RCS. That's actually not too bad. We can also do aerodynamics. Yeah, let's do aerodynamics. Let's build better planes. And yeah, let's spend it on one of these guys. Either little satellite propulsion systems, which we're not going to use for this one, you'll see in a second. So I guess I don't need these. So let's go ahead and do the RCS one. Yeah, we'll need that eventually. So go ahead. RCS is effectively looking... You can kind of think of it as like puffs of air, although it's not air, but puffs of air that are used to move you around in space. They're not especially powerful, but they go in multiple directions and they're very, very controllable. So it's very good, for example, for docking. But we're not going to be doing docking in this episode. That is another time. For today, we're going to go in the VAB and build ourselves a satellite. Now, the satellite for the contract we accepted, let's go ahead and look to see what we actually needed on that satellite, because we can't just launch a thing. We have to launch a thing that has specific parts on it, so that it's in orbit. So this is the last mission right here that we see. Let's get rid of those. It says, ensure that the unmanned probe is newly launched, so that means you have to build it now. You can't just take one of your old satellites and throw it in that orbit. That would be cheating. It needs to reach the designated orbit around the moon with minimal deviation. The deviation that they give you is pretty large. But it has to have a mystery goo, a unit on the satellite, it has to have a thermometer, it has to have a materials bay, and maintain stability for 10 seconds. Okay, that's pretty cool. So, pretty easy. So materials bay is the key thing here, and that's the reason why we're not going to use the smaller satellite engines. So what are we going to use as the thing driving this? It's a satellite, so it doesn't have a Kerbin on board, it has a computer driving it, and it's going to use this Probodobodine Octo. Now, don't use the Staputnik. The Staputnik is, I mean, it's fine, it works, but it doesn't have the ability to use SAS, or stability assisting, so it's kind of garbage. But the Probodobodine Octo is going to be useful here. Now, what you'll also notice, if I right-click, you can see some things about it. Come on, right-click. We'll say reaction wheel. The torque, pitch, yaw, and roll is 0.3 torque. Okay. Who cares, as you might wonder. But we've been using... But you will care, because we're using the MK1 command pods often to carry our Kerbals. And this has a torque of 5. So it's 0.3 versus 5, which means that we've been using a lot of extra turning power on this command pod. So we might want to add a little reaction wheel or something to this to have it easier to turn, which we can actually do. I think if we have them available. I don't know if we do, actually. Command and control. Inline stabilizer. This is the reaction wheel. It's 15 units of torque. We don't need that. This guy, though, small inline reaction wheel, 5 units of torque. So it basically makes us as an MK1 again. So we can throw that right on here, and that's no big deal. Okay, so we will actually put that on there just so it's a little easy to maneuver our probe, because it's going to have... The probe itself is fine in terms of the little torque, but it's the spacecraft to get to the moon. It's going to be annoying if we don't have a lot of torque to move around, because we're going to have a decent amount of spacecraft behind this thing. So we are going to give this guy a material science bay right here, so we're going to stick that right below it. We're going to need to power this thing, so let's just stick some... Let's see, let's stick 4 of these little solar panels here. We'll also give ourselves some batteries. We'll just put 2 there, because what we will... hold on, let's put the 2... let's turn them upside down. That's fine. And then let's Let's make sure that there is other science on board. We need a thermometer and a mystery goo. We'll actually put 2 thermometers just because of symmetry and weight distribution. 2 mystery goo units because, again, the same reason, even though we absolutely only need 1. And then we'll throw a fuel tank on there. We might want to mess with this thing a lot, so let me actually just give myself plenty of fuel. I just don't want to run into fuel troubles, and it's not going to be a big deal if I add more. We're going to use the Terrier engine to get this thing around because it's very maneuverable and efficient in space. And then finally, the only other thing we need to add to this, now this is actually fine. We're going to add 2 more things to this to make it kind of useful-ish? I don't know. We're going to add... Just in case, we're going to add a little bit of a Clampetron docking port junior. I'm just going to start adding these things to almost everything that I build that's going to stick around in space, just in case we ever want to get to it and, like, I don't know, take the fuel out or kind of do stuff with it. Without docking port, we have weird ways of attaching to these spacecraft, so let's not worry about it too much. And then the last thing we're going to do is add a high-gain antenna. What this is going to allow it to do is this is going to be going around the moon. I figured we might as well use this as a relay station. And this is a relay antenna, which means it doesn't just connect to the Kerbal Space Center. What it can do is it can actually be used to bounce a signal from another craft that is out of range of the Kerbal Space Center to talk to the Kerbal Space Center, which is pretty cool. And it can even allow us, for example, to have communications on the other side of the moon when the moon is in between the Kerbal Space Center. I mean, of course, this satellite has to be in a proper orbit, but it might be. So it's a good idea. We'll start our little Kerbin network. We'll throw 2 high-gain antennas on here. And again, I'll just use 2 because that's just useful. So we'll stick them here, and you see they pop out to the side like that. Okay, so that's cool. There we go. That is the satellite, and we need to actually now launch it with something. And I like to have plenty of power, so I'll just go ahead and build this pretty quick, and you'll see it's going to be a pretty quick build, so I'll be right back as we speed through this. Okay, here we are. This is the Space Oddity. This is going to be our launched vessel. What you'll notice that is different from previous vessels is that this is using not just, okay, well, it's using liquid rocket boosters as well as solid rocket boosters to get it launched up, which is typical for what we're doing here. We're using thumpers once again, and we're setting the thrust limiter just a little bit lower than normal. We're using a Reliant engines as well as a swivel engine in the middle, but what we've added here are these little yellow things, these little yellow tubes. Whoa, let's see, there we go. This little yellow tube is a fuel transfer line. It is a, what is it called actually? External fuel duct. What it's going to do is continuously transfer fuel out of this tank into the middle tank, and likewise we have one on the other side. And this is what's known as asparagus staging, where we're guaranteed to always have that middle rocket have fuel until the external rockets, the ones on the sides, run out of fuel. So they're going to run out of sides first, and then we'll start using up all the fuel in the middle rocket. And so it basically allows you to build to ensure that the rockets from the outside in can be gotten rid of. It's called, so you sort of like peel off the layers. You can have multiple layers of asparagus staging. We just have one little layer, and it's kind of like a half layer. But anyways, we have this thing ready to go. Let's go ahead and launch, right? Well, no, we're going to save. We're going to save, and we're just going to wait. We're just going to wait. So why wouldn't we want to launch right now? I want to launch right now, don't you? Well, just a second. Remember that second problem with our satellite orbit, where this moon, this satellite orbit, is tilted as crazy tilted? So how do we get around this problem? Even if we launch right now from the planet Kerbin, you see how it's totally wrong? It's not lined up properly. Now, if I could line up the moon and the planet Kerbin and the orbit looked like that, then we could actually launch okay. Because what we do is we would just try to get a periapsis right around here instead of like right around here like we normally would. And then we'd be fine. We would be off it a little bit in the inclination, but we wouldn't have to change that much. Right now, as it is, the best I could do probably is maybe around a 30 to 25 degree maybe inclination change. That's the best. And that's bad. That's a lot of inclination change, because if you remember from episode 2, I think, you have to use a ton of fuel in order to make plane changes to your orbit. So in order to avoid this, how do we avoid this? Well, we just have to wait until the moon lines up so that it's roughly like this to the planet Kerbin. So let's go ahead and just warp time a bit, and usually we can just wait until the moon comes around until it is close to this. We'll wait until they're eclipsed about like this, because the moon is going to actually travel a bit further as we launch from the planet Kerbin. There we go. We're good. Right about there. So now when I launch, I should be pretty close, able to get it decently close to this inclination. Maybe within 10 degrees, and that's fine. If I'm within 10 degrees, I'm happy. If I'm like 12 degrees, I'm still happy. So anyways, let's go ahead and launch now from the planet Kerbin, and we'll be okay with that. It's a night launch. It's a night launch. Cool. Anyways, let's go ahead and do the night launch. So we've done these launches before. This is a pretty standard launch. I did, however, I added some of the aerodynamic fins I noticed right before launch that we didn't have any, so we're going to have some problems with stabilization. But otherwise, it's a pretty standard launch to orbit. We've done this before. What you'll just note is that with the asparagus staging, we lose the boosters first, and then of course we lose the outer engines, and then we'll be good to go. It is important to note that we keep our nose pointed toward the prograde marker as we do our turn, just to make sure that when we're launching out of our staging, we don't hit the stages on the way down. But otherwise, it's a pretty standard launch to get into low Kerbin orbit. And there we have it. So it is an orbit, but it's not a great orbit, but it's an orbit. Hey, what do you know? Anyway, so we're going to head to the moon. We're going to do a normal way of intercepting the moon. We put it at about 12 o'clock, and we put about a 4 o'clock, and stick our prograde vector out until we actually intercept the moon. And as you see, we get an intercept, but it's a little bit, it's there still in front of the moon. It's a little harder to get an intercept behind the moon. Usually you need to do a little more delta V, and we should be able to get one. There it is. It's a little bit behind, but it's not exactly where I would want it to be. We might have to play around with this a bit. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. This is putting it in a weird orbit, but let's go ahead and actually focus view on the moon, because then we can see, because our orbits actually are pretty not bad. So this is actually not bad. Look at that. That's 400 and some. Here, let's try to, if I put this a little further out, actually get rid of that delta V, right? Yeah, a little too much delta V. And we get a little bit closer into the moon. That's gonna be fine. It's gonna be okay. We do want to be a little bit further out, so let's go ahead, because these are about a 700,000 meter and a 1.7 million meter apoapsis. So let's go ahead a little bit further out. That should be just fine. And yeah, we're gonna be okay to do it this way. What we will want to do, however, is an inclination change, and we can do that here right now as well. So we'll do an inclination change. We'll go up a bit. And as we go up, we're going to also be giving it more delta V, as you see, but that is okay. We can even change a little bit the direction of where we are to be a little bit more on top, as you see, of the moon. And that is going to get our periapsis pretty close to where we want to be. So I'm going to put the delta V up even more. Hold on. We'll probably also be adjusting this. I'm just actually going to play with all of these guys until we get something, that I kind of like. It's closer to the moon than I would like to be, but it's not too bad. You see that? This orbit is not too bad in terms of where we are. So if we actually start it a little bit there, oh, that's actually pretty good. That's pretty good. It's a bit hard to see from the directions that you have here, but we're going to be pretty close. We're actually getting pretty close in terms of with the periapsis, but we'll change that in a bit. I'm really happy with this inclination. Look at that. That's pretty darn lined up. Because as you see, we actually wanted... The periapsis normally would be over here around by the moon, and if we have a little higher, more delta V or more acceleration in the prograde direction, it'll kind of pull it toward the moon and then sometimes go over on the other side. Otherwise, we need to move the actual place where we start the burn. And then eventually we get something here, but as you see, it's kind of in between, as we're actually getting the periapsis a little bit in between and above where the moon is. So that's actually pretty good. We can go higher and do... Yeah, we're going to do that. So that's a 43-second burn. It's not bad, and it's almost perfect in terms of the intercept, which is great. So we'll do that in 5 minutes and 44 seconds here. We're going to have the node, which means it's about 20 seconds on either side of the node. We'll start it a little early, though. What we will do, however, is we will do a warp to the next maneuver, and I'll see you there. Now, in all likelihood, I don't know if we're going to have enough fuel on this stage, but we are going to burn a little early just to be sure of that, and I can already tell, see, the extra reaction wheel really helps for maneuvering here, because we are actually a pretty big rocket at this point. This is a pretty hefty rocket, and it's a tiny little thing to try to maneuver this rocket. Even with a command pod, it's actually pretty beefy, but this is really tough to move. So we're just about ready to burn right here, and I'm gonna go ahead and burn right now, even though it's a little bit early, but it's not bad. So I'll try to keep on this blue marker, and we'll see what happens. Oh, let me just make sure the SAS was off for some reason. So here we go. Looking okay. We might have enough for it. We'll see. No, I don't think so. I think we'll run out probably before we get there. It'll be close. It'll be close, but I like to keep my focus right here on the moon just because as I get close, we can slow it down. Yeah, we're going to have to go into the next stage. We're done, but only just barely into the next stage. We're doing pretty good here. Now it's a lot easier to maneuver. And this was supposed to be the transfer amount of fuel, so we have tons of fuel left over, so let's go slow. Again, the periapsis is approaching from the forward side of the moon, or actually it's the rear side of the moon, honestly. I've been wrong this time. We're approaching in front of the moon. And as we increase the velocity, it goes through the moon, and then we kind of twist the orbit a bit, trajectory, until we're on the other side. And once we're lined up, I'm going to stop. And you might notice things are looking okay. It's starting to get wrong again, so let's just stop right there. Okay, we're good. And we're good, but we're not quite perfect, right? We're a bit close. We're way too close compared to where we want to be. And the inclination is a little bit wrong. But it's not bad. It's not bad at all. We're actually probably only a few degrees off of inclination. It's definitely under 10, I would say. But it's a little too close. So we're going to fix that, but we're going to fix that, don't worry, we're going to fix it like right here. So we'll add a maneuver node really close to the planet Kerbin, and this will give us the most bang for the buck in terms of delta V. We're going to pull up this, and we're going to probably pull this out with the prograde. And we're just going to mess with it until we get something that's kind of close-ish to what we want. We might even use the blue markers. Yeah, we're going to use the blue markers. Sure, why not? And we're going to use this a little bit more. We're going to use this a little bit more. We're just going to kind of mess with it a bit until we get something that we like. Yeah, even if I mess with it here, we get something a bit better. Oops. No, I want to be here. Okay, get rid of that. We're gonna mess with it over here again. Okay, so we're just gonna mess over with something that we like. It's gonna be closer to around where we need the orbit to be. The inclination is the most important thing, though. So actually, where we were maybe was actually just fine. You know what? Where we were maybe is just actually fine. That's gonna be pretty close. We're not gonna maybe get much better than that unless we actually go lower. You know what? We're going to do it that way. We're going to do a little lower. A little closer. So we're going to do a close flyby of the moon and get the inclination correct. And then we're just going to go higher in the orbit. And I think that's going to be fine. Yeah, we'll do it that way. Okay, so it's just a short burn, and we can do it anywhere on the orbit, really. We don't have to do it right at the maneuver node. So we're just gonna look at this and eyeball it a bit. We're gonna do the burn here, get our periapsis, and make sure it's not too close. As we get closer here, you see this orange. This orange thing is moving closer and closer towards close to where this is. And that's really, really, really close. That's awesome. Okay, so that's it. We're within 20,000 meters of the moon. We'll add a maneuver node right at the moon to try to capture an orbit, and then we'll just go into a higher orbit, and it'll be fine. So it doesn't really matter too much as long as we capture some sort of orbit. It doesn't really matter that it's a perfect orbit. We'll go ahead. It's a 34-second burn, but that's actually probably not that much. It's actually much less than that. Okay, so let's go ahead and warp to that maneuver. Okay, what you might notice is that we now have a red line to Kerbal Space Center because we don't have our antenna extended. So let's go ahead and extend these antennae. We have to do them one at a time because I didn't do anything funny. And we're good to go. We're super good to go. So I think we actually need to do our burn nowish. We could do it nowish. A lot of these things don't matter too much as long as we just do a burn in approximately the right direction. We're going to be going around the moon and lose our connection with Kerbal Space Center, but we still have some control over what we're doing. When you lose connection with Kerbal Space Center, you lose some of the flight control characteristics. Probes, like I can't change direction now because I'm on the other side of the moon. But especially with probes it really matters. With Kerbals, it doesn't matter as much because Kerbals, they can still... Oh, I can't even delete a node while control is locked. So I can't do anything really because it's a computer. I can't talk to the computer unless I talk via Kerbal Space Center. So this is the good reason why we have this relay antenna. So we actually do have to increase the time. But as you see, this is great. Look at this. 4 degrees. That's not bad at all. That is not a bad inclination change. So we'll do that first. We'll do the inclination change first. We just passed our descending node. We could have done it there. We could also do it at the ascending node, and you know what, we might actually just, why not go ahead and extend our orbit. So what we would love to do is extend our orbit at the periapsis, but unfortunately it's on the other side of the planet that is going to probably be blocked by Kerbal Space Center. So we'll instead extend our orbit when we're right here at the... kind of looking through this plane from the apoapsis to the periapsis, we'll set we'll do a burn like right here to extend our apoapsis out to the periapsis, and then we'll do another burn to circularize the other way. So we'll do this. This is a Hohmann maneuver, just a Hohmann transfer. We'll wait until we're at, like I said, right in this line right here, which is a little bit further in the orbit. It's right around here. It's going to be, yeah, right around there. It's fine. And we'll just go ahead and point ourselves toward the prograde vector, and we can get rid of this, and do the burn. And this extends our apoapsis so that it is directly on the opposite side of us, which is what we want, because we want it roughly to line up with this periapsis here. And the reason why I'm doing this now, I'm going to get it pretty close, and the reason why I'm doing this now is because it's going to be easier to do the inclination change when we are further out from the orbiting the mass that you're orbiting. If we did the inclination change when we're close to the moon, it uses more fuel that way. The most efficient way is to actually go farther out, do your inclination change, and then actually it could be it could be going back is actually the easier way. In this case, what we're going to do is I'll just set at my periapsis or my apoapsis, and now it should be still in connection with the planet Kerbin all around our orbit, because as you see, it's like facing the planet Kerbin all around here. So we should have no trouble with talking to Kerbin for a while now. So let's go right about here. Let's kind of eyeball it, and we'll again do another transfer or another burn right here. I'm being very loose with the fuel because I have tons of fuel here on this thing. So we're just going to point at the prograde vector and do a burn, and get our new apoapsis should be right around here, and we're going to wait until it's about 1.7 million. Whoa, hey now. We're getting a little further out, and as you see, we're actually starting to kind of do like this with the orbits. In order to get that back at our point of change right here, we can do a burn in a direction. I just want to check. We can do a burn toward the moon in this case, and it should fill us out. So let's go ahead at that blue marker right toward the moon, and this should change the direction of our orbit. Remember, this kind of slides things from, if you were looking here, it'd slide things this way. It would slide our one side that way and this side that way. So like that. Yeah, that's looking good. All right. Our inclination is not changing at all, but that's looking pretty good. And we can actually get the the apoapsis out just a bit more. We'll do another prograde burn to get that apoapsis out just a bit more here. So it's 1.5. The actual true apoapsis should be a 1.7 million, something around there. Right about there. That's good. Okay, so we're actually pretty good. We just need to do an inclination change now, and I think it'll be okay. Now we're going to wait until we get to the ascending node here, and just to give myself an idea of what direction we're going to want to face, it's going to be this way. So it's going to be that way by only about 12 meters a second. So let's go ahead and point ourselves toward this guy right here. Come on, and let's wait until we are right there. So we'll warp right to that ascending node. We'll cut it. Okay, so let's go ahead and do a burn. Oh, we're good. We're good. And wait, 10 seconds. And hey, we did it. We did it. We have a contract complete. Yes. All right, 10 seconds of stability. Instantly, as you see, we actually got that. That's pretty cool. So there you go, a very difficult orbit of a satellite. Now, we didn't do a kind of a basic satellite for this very purpose. Now, simple satellites and like put a satellite into an equatorial orbit of Kerbin, you guys can do that no problem, and now you can do a difficult orbit of a satellite around a body like this. And this type of orbit's really useful because, as you see, often it's really able to connect with Kerbal Space Center. So if we want to, we can put another one in a weird orbit kind of this way around the moon and have a really good chance that we're going to cover anything that's hanging out around the moon. But anyways, guys, that's going to be it for this episode. We had a fun time putting a satellite in an orbit of the moon. We got some science for it, and it's pretty cool. So let's go back to the Space Center and see that now we have a little more science. I think we got like 20 more science or something for that. Yeah, 25 science. All right, so looking pretty good. All right, guys, thanks for watching. It's been great and fun, and I'll see you in the next video. All right, take care. Bye-bye.